Hi, I'm Dr. Eugene O'Loughlin and welcome to my Problem Solving Techniques course. In this lecture, we're going to take a look at check sheets. Now, our objectives for this lesson are as follows. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to, first of all, define what is meant by a check sheet, then decide when we should use a check sheet, also outline a set of criteria for creating a check sheet, and finally, distinguish between the two types, tally and defect map check sheets. This is the structure of our overall course, and we are in section number 1, problem identification. And within that section, we have 4 techniques for problem solving, and the second of these is check sheets, which is what this lesson is all about. Let's start off by using a quote. This one is from Gene Kranz, an American space engineer. And he once said, "Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing." So in other words, we need to figure out what is happening and we need the evidence for what's causing that. We don't want to guess what it is. Now, there will be times when you may have to guess, but we want evidence and we're going to use a check sheet to help us gather evidence. So a check sheet is a very simple form designed to record and quantify facts and data over a period of time. So we can see here, in a very simple one that we have, that we've got a count. In this case here, we're just counting what's happening in the center, and we've got 3 events, and we've got a score on the right hand side that helps us to maybe target, for example, event B here is happening the most. Well, why is that happening? Is that bad? Is that good? We can investigate that. So we now have hard evidence, and this helps us change from saying things like "I think the problem is" to change that to "the data says the problem is." So in other words, hard raw facts help us to get this information together. So the construction of a check sheet should be tailored to collect data on specific categories and the location of defects if possible, frequency or possible causes of these events. So here's a fairly elaborate check sheet here about customer complaints. And we're gathering information about 5 different categories here: ordering, shipping, billing, defect and service, over the 5 days of the week for a 4-week period. And then, so you can imagine this as an empty table, and then as the time goes along, we record how many times a customer complaint occurs. So for example, in week 1, on Monday, there were 2 complaints for ordering. On Tuesday, there was 1 complaint for ordering. On Wednesday, there were 5, and so on. And we can get then over the 4-week period, we can see how many complaints are occurring on each day of the week and what the total is for the 4 weeks. We can see that there were 66 complaints in total. We can also see how many total of all the different categories are occurring on each day of the week as well. And we can see at the end over here on the right hand side, we've got 216 overall complaints. So this allows us to focus in on where the most complaints are occurring. Now we might know that there's a lot of complaints for ordering and service, but we do not know how many there are. But at the end of this exercise, we do know that there were 66 ordering complaints and 69 service complaints. So that's an actual fact, hard piece of information. And we can also see that in the shipping and billing categories that the number of complaints is a lot less, 20 in total over the 4-week period for each of these. So you can see here how, you can imagine yourselves now how this could be built up over a period of time. So every time a complaint occurs, what category is it, and log it or record it on my check sheet. So after a 4-week period here, I have good, hard, raw evidence to investigate the numbers of customer complaints. So when should we use a check sheet? Well, to observe an operation and record specific data over a period of time, like we have just done in the example just visited. But also we can use this information over the short term to observe process variability in the current situation. It can be useful for that. And also allows us to identify what potential problems should be addressed first. So flipping back to my customer complaints check sheet, we can see that it's obvious that we should tackle ordering and service first before other types of defects in order to reduce the number of customer complaints. And finally, the check sheet allows us to confirm the effects of the problem, as we have just seen. The check sheets also allow us to get a clearer picture of factual problems, not just the obvious or the most common ones. So might know, and most businesses will know if there's a lot of customer complaints, what categories there are, but they may not know exactly when they're happening and how many there are in total. So when you're drawing up your check sheet, here are 5 questions that you should answer. First of these is what event is occurring. So you decide what's occurring and record that. But also, who is responsible for the event? when and where does it occur, how often does the event occur, and how long does it take. So once you've identified the events, ask these questions, and they will go a long way towards helping you to solve a problem. Now, as I mentioned in the objectives, there are two types of check sheet. The first of these is a tally check sheet. And this is a very simple check sheet where we count the number of events occurring. So in this one here, we have 3 events, A, B, and C, and we have counted over a period of time how many of those occur. So we can measure activities like amounts, or events occurring, or time, and that sort of thing with a simple tally. And we can see here that I'm tallying 5 occurrences at a time, using an old-fashioned four lines with a bar across the center to record that there are 5, and then I can see the scores on the right hand side. A defect map is a variation on the tally check sheet. We can see I'm using it in conjunction with a tally check sheet here, and we have a photocopier machine which errors occur or defects occur on this, as we all know happens all the time. But in addition to this, we've got 3 defects, X, Y, and Z. In addition to the count of each of these occurring, we also have, using a defect map, the location of where they are occurring. So defect Y occurs 3 times, but it occurs at the top, at the paper feed-in part of the photocopier. Defect X occurs 5 times, and that occurs in the center, so it's possibly paper getting stuck inside in the photocopier. But defect Z, which occurs the most, 6 times, occurs over here on the right-hand side, where the paper comes out of the photocopier. So this allows us not only to have a count of the number of errors, but also the location of the errors, which will help us then target the appropriate defect for being fixed. So let's take a look at a more elaborate example. And this example comes from a book by David Straker called The Quality Tool Book. And in this book, Straker gives an example of a door paint check sheet. We've got a diagram over here on the right hand side, which shows us a tally check sheet in conjunction with a defect map check sheet here. So the scenario was that there was a paint team in a car manufacturer. It had the objective of discovering and removing the main causes of paint blemishes in doors. So we can see over here on the right hand side that there are a lot of paint blemishes happening on the doors of new cars, and of course car manufacturer would not want this to happen, and they've got to try and fix it. So to achieve this, they concluded that they needed to determine the number and location of each type of blemish. So we can see we have 3 different types of blemish. We have a bubble, a run, or a scuff. On the defect map, these are located with 3 different symbols. Circles for bubbles, so we can see there's a lot of bubbles occurring at the front of the door and at the back of the door. The run is identified by the triangle, and we can see they're happening towards the bottom of the door in the main. And the scuff marks, then, there's only 4 of those have occurred, and they're occurring in the middle of the door on the left and on the right hand side. So we have a count, we have the different types of defect, and we have a defect map showing us the location of where they occur. And we also record other information here, such as the paint robot number and the batch number and who's the operator, the date and time, and so on. So the result of the outcome of this, having done this and captured and recorded all of this evidence, the paint bubbles were the most common problem, and these were investigated first. This grouping of paint bubbles here led the team to investigate the paint programming, where it was discovered that the paint robot was hesitating at corners. So reprogramming the robot significantly reduced the number of errors. And further analysis found that varying paint viscosity was causing runs. So that's the second most common error here. So instead of guessing what the problem might be, the paint team actually recorded over a period of time the number of blemishes that were occurring, the type of blemishes, and also the location of the blemishes. And that then gave them the evidence they needed to go and fix the problem. Now, in your assignment for this lesson here, I'll be asking you to do the following. I'll be asking you to prepare a tally and or a defect map check sheet for any of the following scenarios, or all of them if you want, or you can try out a scenario of your own. So these are typical everyday scenarios for many people. So what about types of delivery at your office reception desk? So you could be getting, flowers delivered, parcels delivered, letters delivered, all sorts of things being delivered, who they're for, how often do they come, what times of day do they come at, and so on. So prepare a check sheet for the office reception desk. Or what about a vehicle breakdown maintenance check sheet? You can imagine fairly elaborate ones of these in a breakdown service. What about fire safety drill? We're all familiar with this in our offices and businesses. Draw up a safety check sheet for when you run a fire drill. Or the types of returns of damaged goods to a warehouse. Get a check sheet to record that. So that's how check sheets might be used. You can think up many of your own scenarios where you might find one of these useful. You know, pen and paper is the simplest way to do this, but after a while you'll probably start to use some templates to create proper check sheets. So, in summary, in this lesson here, we're going to use check sheets to record facts and data over a period of time. That's the most important thing that a check sheet does, and it's what it is very effective at. We want to determine factual problems, not just the obvious or most common ones. We want to confirm the effects of a problem with the evidence that we gathered, and as we've seen, there are two main types of check sheet, the tally check sheet and the defect map check sheet, often, as you've seen with the door paint, used together. So that's how we use check sheets to help us in our problem solving efforts. I hope you found this lesson useful.